Now, joining me to discuss this are Gregory, Angelo, Executive Director for the Log Cabin Republicans, and Ryan Anderson of the Heritage Foundation. All right, Greg, I'll go right to you on this. Let me throw another wrinkle here. What if somebody refuses to buy a cake from a gay baker? Then what are you going to do? I don't mean you personally. I mean in the specter of law.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I mean, I don't quite understand the hypothetical there. I mean, if I didn't want to buy a cake, I just wouldn't buy a cake. I mean, I think the larger question here.
But isn't that discriminatory? If I stood on a corner and said, I'm not going to purchase a service from you because of my religious beliefs and your sexual orientation, aren't I declaring my discriminatory behavior?
You are allowed to, freedom of speech, you are allowed to declare any position that you like, but we've never had a history in this country of allowing and supporting private businesses to discriminate. In fact, we have moved momentum in this country in order to oppose discrimination on race and now on sexual orientation. Right now, this bill in Arizona, though, it's interesting to point out, it's a bill that is searching for a problem. Right now, as you mentioned, gay and lesbian individuals are not a protected class in Arizona. But what this bill does, especially someone coming from a libertarian standpoint that you do, Andrew, I'd hope you'd appreciate, what this bill does is it creates special rights for individuals who practice a faith. Whether those beliefs are sincerely held or not, what SB-1062 does is allows individuals to refuse service because of their religious beliefs. What about atheists? Are atheists, if they oppose the homosexual quote-unquote lifestyle, allowed to deny a wedding cake to a same-sex couple in Arizona? They don't. So I would hope that any libertarians that are watching your show tonight would oppose this bill for those reasons. Log Cabin Republicans opposes SB-1062 because we cannot,
Greg,
in good conscience or at all, support any legislation that codifies discrimination into legislation.
Greg, libertarians would be happy to bake the cake for anyone. It's a question of whether or not rights conflict. But Ryan, this is what I don't understand. How do you compel someone to provide something? Then if that product or service that is provided is less than standard or less than par, are we going to have another law that says not only are you going to provide cakes or hotel beds or restaurant service to somebody, it's also going to be satisfactory? I mean, what if the cake stinks?
Exactly. In a free society, you don't coerce someone else into baking you a cake. A free society like America respects the rights of freedom of contract, freedom of association, freedom of speech, and the free exercise of religion. And all the Arizona bill does is protect rights that should be unquestionably protected. It takes away nothing from anyone. It just allows business owners to run their businesses in accordance with their beliefs. And no one should be forcing them to bake a cake or take pictures when they don't want to. They let the market sort this out.
Yeah, there's one for you, Greg. I mean, what if somebody is expected to photograph a wedding and they do a really crappy job because their heart's not into the artistic aspect of it? I mean, why would anybody want to coerce somebody to provide them? I wouldn't look. I was a waiter in a restaurant. I know what can happen if you anger the waiters. I don't want to sit down in a restaurant where they don't want me seated. So, Greg, why would anybody want a product or service from somebody that doesn't want to provide it?
You know, we're talking right now about free market solutions, and you made a great point about being in New York City and being able to take your business elsewhere if someone didn't like your NRA T-shirt or your libertarian hat or whatever the case may be. But we're talking right now about Arizona, and there are rural parts of Arizona. There are rural parts around this country, and I think it's very easy for individuals, whether they are libertarian, conservative, or even liberals, who live in progressive pockets of the country, urban areas of the country, where, yeah, it's very easy for them to just go down to the baker down the street. It's a wholly different question when you are a gay couple in a part of the country, say in rural Arizona, where you don't really have those options there. You cannot go to another baker. You cannot go to another photographer. So just from a very basic standpoint, as far as that goes,
you guys can go crosstalk.
And yet there are no examples of that. There are no examples of a couple that couldn't find a baker to bake their wedding cake, or a couple that couldn't find a photographer to take their wedding photos. In each case where we've seen a lawsuit brought against a wedding provider, they've always been able to find the service provided by someone else. And yet several times we've seen these photographers, these bakers, these florists, they've lost the lawsuits. The government has compelled them. The government has fined them for not providing their services to a same-sex wedding celebration. But what's
Sure,
really
Ryan, those
important
were
to note
all
here
in
is
states that allowed, that provided for non-discrimination clauses on sexual orientation, and right now that's not the case in Arizona.
Greg, I think we wouldn't want to see a gay baker be forced to bake a cake for someone in the KKK or someone who says, you know what, Mr. Baker, I want a swastika on my cake. Somebody might say, you know, you could take that someplace else. We don't do that here. I want people to be able to operate within their own moral conscience, whether it's your conscience, my conscience, or anybody else's conscience, without the law coercing people. The free society does not allow people to get, you talk about special treatment. First of all, the First Amendment does protect the freedom of religion, but why would you create a scenario where a person can now drag any business owner into court and claim they've been discriminated against?
Why would you create a scenario where anyone can claim sincerely held religious beliefs in order to break the law, to discriminate against people? I mean, we live in a nation under the Constitution. It's governed by the Constitution, not the Bible. And what this law does is it muddies the waters in that regard, where individuals who have sincerely held religious beliefs are given special protections and special rights and a special license to discriminate against LGBT, gay individuals, and others, although the real heinous part of this bill is that it was created specifically as a knee-jerk reaction in opposition to the growing momentum for equal rights for gay and lesbian Americans. So while people are using religious liberty as a shield, or stating they're using religious liberty as a shield, the fact is they're using it as a sword, and they're using it as a sword against the LGBT community, and they're doing it under the guise of religious liberty. From our standpoint, that's not something we could ever support. It's not something that any good conservative should even support.
I mean, look, again, if I'm baking cakes,
true.
I'm doing it for a profit. I'll bake anybody's cake. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Almost none of what was just said is actually true. This bill was originally passed in 1999, and it's merely being updated to include for-profit businesses under who is protected against government coercion.
That's the big thing. That's the big thing, Greg, is the coercion, because the abuse that is potential here is, I mean, I don't think we're really thinking about the potential for abuse, Greg.
I think we're most definitely thinking about the potential for abuse. The fact that you have all of these members of the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, Marriott, American Airlines, and others that have come out in opposition to this shows me that they don't see that there's
well, Marriott will make all the money then.
Danger of lawsuits.
All these companies that are not going to discriminate are going to make all this money. That's great for them. I support that.
Well, then that's terrific then. But I mean, I don't know. Would you support companies who discriminate? I mean, that's really the line in the sand that's being drawn right here. Essentially, what SB-1062 does is it says anyone who discriminates is welcome to do business here in Arizona. That's why you're having such tremendous pushback by Republicans, by Senator McCain, Senator Jeff Flake, and members of the business community, because they don't want businesses in Arizona or really in America to send that message, Ryan.
Ryan, that's the thing, though. All of these businesses, I mean, look, if I'm baking cakes on the east side of the street and the guy on the west side of the street doesn't want to bake a cake for someone, I'm more than happy to pull his business to my side of the street. All these companies don't have to worry about discrimination except for profiting from it, maybe, if anybody's discriminated against.
It's really amazing. In 1993, a near unanimous Congress passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and President Clinton signed it into law. Arizona then passed a state version of that Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1999. And all they're doing last week and this week, if the governor signs it into law, is specifying that for-profit businesses also enjoy protections of religious liberty. This takes nothing away from anyone, and it's remarkable that someone from a Republican organization would come on your show and say that the government should be coercing other people into contracting and associating and running their businesses in accord with the government's values, not their own values.
All right, guys, I gotta leave it there.